Well, here we are again. Thanking you, James, multiple donor. I think that's 4 times. Thank you so much, James. Stella B., thank you very much, and you're welcome. Regarding the Velasquez, she was thanking me for Velasquez, for teaching about Velasquez. And Nelson B., thank you all very much. Great to have you guys have your name show up. I think, well, the two of you, but Nelson's a new name to me. And anyway, good. Well, thank you very much for those nice donations. Much appreciated. I need to say also, by the way, that we are heading toward we probably today are arriving at our 2,500th subscriber. And so we are going to make plans for within the next couple of weeks, maybe sooner, but I'm sorry, that is sooner, isn't it? But within the next couple of weeks, hopefully not later. We're going to go ahead and do a live show again, and so stay tuned for that. And I'm going to try to figure out ways to make sure I get that to all the sort of other locations we have, like Instagram and stuff. So thank you for all the subscribing, and we shall look forward to that. So let's. Jocko gave me another one, and I know I'm overdoing it on the Jockos, but meaning Jocko, I hope other people aren't thinking that. I like a good question. This one I wasn't so sure I was going to do because I'm not inclined to just make a presentation of my work. And frankly, on the subject you ask, here's using your own works as examples. Can you shed some light about shedding light on your subject, be it a portrait model, full figure, or cast statue, or still life setup? So I'll just sort of randomly talk about those with my own pictures, as you ask. And I load my pictures in here from time to time whenever I see the opportunity, to make a comparison or whatever. But one of the things that we're trying to do is enable the younger painters. I'm not convinced that most of you who would have spent time in front of painting would have already figured out most of the things I'm going to tell you today. But I'll just do it as simply as I can. We're going to talk about lighting whatever you're painting. And I hope this is of some value. I don't, I paint in whatever light I find, but I'm not looking for a particular light. I haven't in the past actually hunted around to find something unusual or something. I think it's interesting I think people should constantly do things that they're outside their sort of norms. And for example, backlighting, those kinds of things, or cross lighting, or multiple sources and that sort of thing. But I find that there are best practices. And for example, you don't want the picture to become about the lighting. I see that several times in Orpin. And I look at this, he's got a really strong backlight, and the picture's very nice, but it's all of a sudden it seems to me to rather be about backlighting and about sort of that skill. And, to the extent it sells the model, makes the sitter more viable, more engageable, more, just more what you want, what you see in the model comes forward because you use that light, then I'm with it completely. But it's like distortions in proportion, in perspective, or lens stuff where you get funny fuzzy edges all around the outside, so it looks like a lens, noticeably like a lens. I think all those things distract. But it doesn't mean any of them, everything is okay, frankly, and really what matters at the end of the day is whether you actually have a picture that has that music that we talk about that actually is visually engaging. As I said, that's what I've been talking about fits into rather the subject question, right? When you do backlighting or weird perspectives, that becomes subject. So, but that doesn't mean those things can't also be wonderfully beautiful and are frequently when they happen. Good painters don't do that badly. Be one of those things you want to do though in your life. So I'm just going to show you the floor plan of a studio. This is somewhat like my studio. I have low windows that are normal, like what you'd call oh, what do we used to call those lights? The big windows in a normal house. The front, the front window of the house. That's about that level in my studio. I think this is probably about 3+ feet, and this sets between. It's a couple more feet, so it goes up to something like 5 and 6. Probably this line here might be as low as this might be as high as 7 feet. And then this window here, which is something like 65 by 75 or something like that, so begins at a level above the 7 foot level, or roughly the 7 foot level. This idea here is based on. So what you can see is I can get as low a light as I want. This bar isn't usually much of a problem if I want to take this much of the light. Let me get that bright light shiny thing for you guys who see better with that. So here's the what I'm saying is this is you could paint if you want to do just side light. You could just use this. You can use this as a group, even though it has a bar across it. I know the Fenway Studios, we sometimes use 2 windows, and they were very wide bars, and wider than that. They were vertical. But this location here is based rather on what you read in Sir Joshua Reynolds, which I'm sorry I don't have the words to offer you, but he talks about what I think he's called the 30-degree light, 30-degree light, 30 degrees, so that the angle coming down to your subject wouldn't be straight across. It would come down at your subject, and he mentioned something like 30 degrees. He also mentions a window area of about, I think, 6 feet or 5 feet by 5 feet as your optimal window. You don't want windows just go on and on and on, because it widens. The wider the light is, the flatter the form gets. The narrower the light, the more middle tones, shall we say, and the more sense of round you get. Narrow artificial light can do that if it's not too close to the model and not too hyper, not too brilliant. But all I'm going to do is show you here on the floor, first of all, that front light would have you standing if you're the model. Say this is the model. This could be a cast stand, or it could be a human standing there. And this side, by the way, I'm just showing you, this is roughly my eye level in this studio. And so when I line up models, I typically line them up figures. I try to line them up on my level, or maybe even sometimes a little above me. I almost never look down. I don't like the idea of looking down on my sitters. On the other hand, there may be reasons that are agreeable to both you and the sitter to do that. But front light, therefore, what I'm going to give you now is front light. Front light is the light. So if this thing here, if the light's coming from here, the front of that figure, this little spot here would line up halfway between. So I went up to this level, it would be halfway between my light. Halfway between I take that back now. What I'm trying to say is this simply the spot would be lined up. This spot here would be in a straight line with this. That would be straight front light. Ang is an example of somebody who uses straight front light. I have a picture in here that's almost straight front light, and I'll mention it as I go by. 3/4 front light would be when you stand over here. It's all where you stand, by the way. The light's going to hit the model no matter what, right? And you can pose the model depending on where you stand, any which way you want, turning and turning and turning. You're still going to be in 3/4 light if you're here. You're going to be in front light if you're standing here. And over here, you'll be in side light. The model will be half lit. And it's not a good look, so you'll move one way or the other and make it less or more than half lit. If you don't want it to look like 50/50s, which is just sort of a thing to avoid even in lighting. And then this back here, and anything beyond this point becomes backlight. And that light there is, so you're looking at the model. That's sort of what we're getting right from this view, right? That's what I'm showing you here, is that most of the model is dark. Most of the head is going to be dark in this light. And if you get further and further around, as a tarbell I'm going to show you a little later. Now, I think these things should be very self-evident, but I think the one thing you want to be aware of is that you need to work your way through these things systematically and make sure you haven't not considered something. It can be pretty confusing. The only reason I put this easel in here is because I want to show you that, and I didn't quite place this on the floor, right? This is very awkward with the drawing program I have to do this. But no matter where you are in relation to the floor, or the model rather, you will put your easel so it's perpendicular to the light. I take that back. I take that back completely. I don't mean that. You'll stand yourself perpendicular to your easel. Okay? So this, if you were painting from here, this would be about the right. This easel would now be perpendicular to your line of vision, right? The way it turns, if you follow what I mean, the way it turns. So you want your easel to be always facing you perpendicular, right? Never on a tilt, because you'll skew the image if you're painting straight, looking at that skewed image, you'll get a distortion. So that's the first thing, is make sure your image is always, that you are always lined up on your easel. But the second part is you've got to make sure your easel is always in very good light. Now, I don't think very good light is what I just said a minute ago. Is not to have it smashing straight into the easel. The light needs to be a raking light, which means if the light's coming in from here, that's good. If the easel's like this, that's straight on light. You want a raking light, which means something of a side light. And that's because you're going to get enormous glare on yourself almost any other way. Even coming over the top of your head, you'll have glare. So keep your easel turned well enough away from the light so you don't have glare, but also make sure it's perpendicular to your line of vision. And you can see that what happens then is that if you're standing here, where will your easel be? Right? Your easel will either be over here in some proximity to this. And by the way, the sight sizer guy is always trying to line up so he's in a line with this. But if you're not doing sight size, just make sure your easel is lined up in your easel is far enough away from you that the object on it, the greatest dimensions of the object on it, are at least 3+ times away from your eyes. And I would say closer to 4 is a better place. Of course, you always stand 3.5 times the distance of your, away from the height of your sitter. You always want to stand back at least far enough to avoid all the distortions that would be caused by being too close, perspective distortions. Okay, so then if you're standing here painting this guy, your easel you'll find a place to put your easel where, not here this way, because that would get you a straight on light, but you'll try to get it turned, maybe it'll angle this way a little bit, more like this is what I'm saying. And you can put it up here anywhere you want, all the way through this area. Just keep it perpendicular to your eyes, and keep it not having a front light, but having a raking light hitting it. So when you're here, and this is the problem for the sight sizer who wants to line up here, if you're here doing a backlight picture, you can't get enough light, put the easel next to the model and get enough light on the easel. You won't get enough light. So you have to put the easel out here. And that's where all the fun begins for the sight size guy, right? But so here again, the easel will be out here, and it'll be perpendicular to your line of vision. So here's my line of vision. It's perpendicular right there. That's my painting right there, always perpendicular to it. And both this way and this way, okay? Think about that one. And what else can I say about that? But just that's all I'm saying. That's just sort of the big summary view of how to get the light. But just understand the backlight, you're standing over here looking at the model. It's just that the model will be mostly in the dark. Up here, she'll be halfway in the light. I'm saying she, I'm picturing a sitter I'm working on. Up here, this will be 3/4 front light when I do most of my paintings from in this zone right here. And that's even in still life. And that's what you're going to find, I think, typical of almost all of Western art. Or if it's either that or it's front light, it's just this zone over here. And it's undoubtedly because that's where you really get to explore in light the subject, so you get the subject lit. I'm making too much of this, am I not, Jocko? So these are my early still lifes with Gamma. You can see that the lighting is coming in from the right side here. So this would have been on the, for my studio there, it would have been on the, it would have been on the north light coming this way. It would be on the west wall. And this one, I painted this one on the east wall. And I think at that point I might have moved to a different studio because there's a staircase coming down. These would have blocked this being a good viewing spot. But you can see this is a little bigger than 3/4. I'm standing, so the light's coming in from a position straight in from here, right? And I'm standing further over till I get more and more of the shadow. The further I stand this way, if I kept standing further and further over here, I'd have only a skinny bit of light over here. This is 3/4 front light. So you're seeing in both of these, more or less 3/4 front light. You can see that more specifically, say, on something like this. This is not side light, not real side light, but 3/4 front or something roughly like that. Here again, you can see that there's more light. That's what we mean by 3/4, is 3/4 lit. and 3/4 or 1/4 dark, that sort of thing. So this is more like 2/3 or something, right? I'm hoping this is what you mean, Jocko, because I think you probably understand all this stuff, but here it is because you put it the way you did. So again, if it isn't what you mean, folks, make sure you really write a couple extra sentences and make sure it's clear. It should be clear to me. Now these are very curious ones. This little still life here, I used a little window, an upstairs window. In fact, in the studio I'm working in now, and I have this big window here, and I have a general light far away of the north light of the studio, but I'm very far from that light. I'm very close to this light here. So this is what we call cross lighting. So the general light of this thing. I'm not a big fan of it because I don't like the way it makes everything into a cutout, but that can be useful sometimes. I mean, it just doesn't appeal to me as much as, say this one. But this is another version of multiple light sources. You can see from this wall here, and where I'm standing, I have light over my shoulder. There's a bar of windows up high, right over my shoulder. So I'm standing in a light back here where you see the arrow, if you can back yourself into this room. And then we have this cool light here, hence the name warm and cool, by the way, which is doing its lighting of multiple things in different ways. And here's the warm light. So now, what the fun thing to say about this is I could never have done this if I had to understand this lighting. I only have to do this well. I have to only understand how to see. You know, what value and what color is this to this, right? And what are they doing in terms of their shapes and how this whole thing is about the interplay of stuff. And before you know it, you can paint anything you want. And I use this one not infrequently because of the complexity of it. It's a three-way lighting. And I never thought once about the light. I just painted what I saw. And I say that, I mean, you can look at the light and wonder about it and think about it. For example, when I was looking at this warm light, and I began to wonder about where else it picked up warm. Yeah, you can do that. But you don't have to be clever. What you have to be clever about is hitting the note and making it right in relation to other notes, both in placement, value, color, and chroma. And then managing, of course, the location of the edge, the points, the phenomena of the read. So, but now this is a fun one. This is where I elevated. So I showed you my studio, and normally I would light a thing of maybe about here. Well, with this one, I went way up high, and the light is shooting down here. In other words, when I brought this stuff in closer, I have a natural in my studio. I've built a natural shadow box. So there's and that's again, I don't know if that's about 8 feet high. There's a place there that I can just make dark. I did that because I found it so difficult to get a lighting where you really had legitimate dark backgrounds without just using dark cloth. I could do it with screens and things like that, but I chose to build this studio this way. So now if I want a light behind here, I have to, this is my sort of shadow box. If I want a light behind here, I actually have to put a screen up to get it. So I've done the opposite. On the other hand, I could just revert to the other side, the other wall. But you can see by the shadow down here, this is very top light. This is very top light. You can see by this, I say very top, well, how top is it, But so it's more than I usually use. That's all I'm really trying to say to you. So that's that kind of lighting. I wanted to show this because it gives you an idea of a more loose impressionist treatment that I sometimes use and depend on the circumstances. And in this case, there was a young girl full of fresh color, live sweet color, and a fuzzy thing that we had to throw on her to keep her warm. So it just happened to be the right color. And so this is, but you can see the lighting is getting kind of close. It's not side lighting, but it's 3/4 light. But if you turn the head a certain way, the shadows begin to be more dominant than they would otherwise be. This is almost front lighting. This is Chloe, the Chloe in the sky with diamonds pastel that you've seen. But this is fairly nearly front lit, just a hint more. And I prefer then to be front lit, to be off a little bit to one side. Even Aang, I believe, does that universally, pretty much universally. So you've seen these before. This is almost a front light. It's really close, but you can see just a little bit more. You can see just a little bit more turn on this side than there is turn on that side. Just a skinny little bit of shadow. So this is nearly front lit. Now this is, and again, when you pose the model, this is, you can tell by here, it's more than 3/4. It's much like this one. It's more than 3/4 front lit. I shouldn't say that. It depends. I'm not sure I can read that for you this way, but this arm tells me that it's 3/4 front lit plus 3/4 plus. But then you turn the head, and the head itself then becomes is now becoming more and more dark dominated. If I turn this way, I'd probably get more lights on. I'm just talking now. These things I have to think about these, and I don't feel like thinking about them too hard. You asked me for figures as well. This is a 3/4 front lit figure, is very standard in the Fenway studios when we worked with Gamel. And these figures here, which are crudely blocked in from some drawing that I've done for a picture I'm working on, give you an idea of my effort to work is almost always moving in the direction of 3/4 front light. I mean, now I almost don't. This is, you see some parts of this is more side than front, but yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, Jocko. But that's typical. Most Western art is like that. And I'll just show you these tarbells because this is actually, both of these are lit from the side. They look like side light, right? That's where you get that half the egg thing. Look, you've done the same thing here. They've done the same thing here. So half of the body is, et cetera. But you can see the light. The light source is probably, there's a light source there too, but the light source hitting her is probably from right here. And then there's this one, which is true backlighting. And as I said, I think most of this stuff is really pretty self-evident, so I don't think I'm going to belabor it. But backlighting, so if you're painting site size, your easel would be in the dark in this setting. And by the way, I say this is backlighting. In this reproduction of this thing, this is so dark that would tell me that this is actually, there's no ambient light to speak of where the painter is standing. So he would have had to stand facing this other way, looking over his shoulder at these guys to get this, if this is the light he's using, onto it. There are other dodges you can use if you're using a light over here, like just blocking the whole area with a screen. So if you're standing back over here with a light over your shoulder behind you, you can block the sitter and but not block your easel. But those are the kinds of lighting, and I think that's what you mean by show the how I light images or how one lights images. And I end with this. So I can't tell you I know that was anything but the simplest possible lesson in the world. I think everybody knows this, but here it is anyway, Jocko. If you didn't mean this, be entertained anyway and get back to me. All right. So again, thank you all those wonderful donations and for catching us up. So we're right there at the 2,500 mark. Stay tuned, as I said, for the upcoming live thing. We'll definitely be in better shape for this one than we were for the last. The last one was so experimental. Of course, you're always trying to do better, but so I do hope that we can organize something soon and that you can find your way to it. All right. So thank you. See you next time.